never even heard of it, to be honest. I'd never coded before. This was 2015, and I was looking at grad school programs, and mostly MBA programs, and I kind of, someone emailed me this Master's of Data Science from Northwestern, but at the time it was called a Master's in Predictive Analytics. And yeah, I had no idea what predictive analytics really meant, but I applied and I got into the program. I was living in California at the time. It was a remote program, so I said, "Yeah, I mean, it's Northwestern. Sounds like uh, a good thing to have on my resume, and sounds like I could learn a lot." So, I started this program, and I was working full time still in sales and doing my master's in the evenings. Um, and I didn't even know what Python was. I'd never heard of it. So I sign up my first class, and they say download Python, and I'm thinking, Python, okay, must be a cool software where you push a button and it gives you an output, and super easy to use. Uh, little did I know that you're actually like hard coding what you want to figure out, and so um, so that was a learning experience, and I was halfway through my first quarter in this master's program, um, and I was in this group, and I had just failed my first exam. I'd gotten an F on the first exam, and I was in a group project, and I said to the members of my group, "Hey, do you guys know like any suggestions for how to learn how to code better? Because I don't like I've never coded before." And it seemed like a lot of my classmates were coming from a background of software engineering or engineering of some kind, electrical engineering, where they were a bit more technical and they had coding skills, and so they were more just coming into the sort of data science world. And so one of the members in my group said, "Hey, this program has really high attrition. It's only going to get harder, and you should really consider dropping out because um, if you don't know how to code, like, you're not going to make it." And I left the call, and I was like, "Man, like, dang it, I'm spending all this money. Like, I should just drop out. Like, I'm only halfway through my first quarter, and this isn't really working out." And right after that, I got an email from someone else that was in my group that had been on the call listening in. And she said, "Don't drop out. It's you can find ways to learn how to code, and it's not a big deal. Like, you'll be okay." So I ended up not dropping out, and I stayed in the program. I actually took most of my classes going forward with this person, this peer, who had reached out to me because she had a little bit more background, and I was able to kind of collaborate with her and learn how to code with her. And I thought that was important to tell you because I think in this world, a lot of the work is frustrating. It can be frustrating to learn some of the mathematical concepts, and it can also be frustrating to learn how to code if you've never coded before. Um, but the frustration is inherent to the work, and it's not a reason to stop going. So another thing I wanted to point out is that as soon as I graduated from my master's, I was immediately kind of looking for a new job, and I got a job as a data scientist at Northrop Grumman. And on paper, that looks super shiny, right? It's like this big technical company, and I had the title of data scientist. But the caveat is that I didn't actually get hired as a data scientist at first. It was a title switch. So they hired me as something called a behavioral research scientist. And the lab that I was working for at the time was doing sort of like work on large data sets of military service members. And so it was data science, but they just weren't calling it that yet. They did end up calling it that while I was working there, but I applied there because it looked like something that would be valuable. And I think that's important too, because a lot of times when you're looking to break into this world, you go on Indeed or LinkedIn and you're searching for a very specific title. And that can be kind of hard sometimes because you never know what's going to kind of help you break into this world. It could be a role that's not titled data scientist, but you're going to be working with big data, and you could gain a lot of great experience from that role. So I think um, that really taught me that. Another thing that I'll say about that role is that I didn't get the job because I was the smartest coder in the interview. I didn't get the job because uh, I had like really great statistical experience. I got that job because as a master's student, I had the opportunity to do a capstone project. And it just so happened that I did the capstone project with my peer, with one of my friends, using real data from a school district that was predicting dropout rates for students in that school district. And we went to the school, we acquired real data, signed a non-disclosure agreement and data sharing agreement. We pulled the real data for our project, and then we built like a really basic predictive model, a logistic regression model that helped them organize their students so that they could kind of track um, how their students were doing. And so when I went to Northrop Grumman and I applied and I interviewed for the job, I was able to present that very simple project to them. And so, like I said, if they had given me like a coding exam or a math exam, and they based my hiring on that, there's no way I would have gotten the job at that time because I had only had a year and a half worth of experience. But data science roles can often be about so much more than just the technical skill. There's a lot of well-roundedness, and it sounds like looking at your guys' backstories, there's a lot of diversity in where you come from. So don't undervalue that diversity. There's a lot of opportunity for people who have communication skills or who have already worked with a certain type of data before, like actuarial data or sales data or even like human behavior data. So I'll point that out. Another thing that I'll point out before I kind of move forward is there's a lot of different angles that I've taken. So Northrop Grumman, the client was the government. So there was sort of this aspect of working for the government, and there was challenges associated with that. There, for a short time, I tried to make that project where I was looking at student data into a anyway, ignore that. And let's see. So the startup kind of the startup world and like the larger organization is one angle that you can take. And then at Exelon, it was like another large enterprise. And then let's see, lastly, hey Aaron, if you're on the line, is there anything that you could do about this?
Yeah, I see this too. I'm trying to get rid of it. I just thought the same stuff here. So
okay, no worries.
yeah, everyone just ignore it. I'm going to try on my end, try and get rid of some of it, but just please ignore this person.
Cool.
Let's continue.
No worries, no worries. Okay, cool. We'll keep going. I just closed out of that. Whoa. So yeah, I think those are the main things that I wanted to point out about my background. Let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so here's my takeaways from this. Let's see. Okay, so I would say, like, I looked at when you guys were kind of posting some of your backgrounds. This is really relevant to that. So, like, make your path with data science your own. So whatever you're doing right now, you're doing the right thing by trying, like by showing up here today. You're doing you're doing the right thing, and no one's story is going to look identical. So like I know, like I showed up at a conference at one point, and I like everyone at the conference had a PhD if they were a data scientist. And in my head, I thought like, oh, in order to be a data scientist, you have to have a PhD. And this was in like 2016. And within like, let's see, within like 3 months after that, I was a data scientist. And now, like, you can have a bachelor's degree, and you can get a title of data scientist. So I think that's kind of like something, just so everyone knows, as like a background. A lot of Zoom calls have been getting hacked this week. So that's kind of what's happening right now. So just ignore it. It's like someone trying to instigate. Let's see. And some of you have asked questions, and I'll answer them. If I forget, just remind me. So yeah, make your own path. There's definitely qualifications. Like you can go to job descriptions and look for specific qualifications that they're asking for. And that's a really good way to sort of see what kind of skill sets you need by going to a job description, looking for those qualifications and finding out how you can kind of learn about them. So like Kevin just asked, what are the best ways to learn languages like Python? So like for me, like there's a lot of different ways. Coursera is great. DataCamp is great. I like with any type of learning to start small. So like start with like don't just like I I don't know if I would advise just going into a master's program like I did. It's great to work with companies like Promotable where you can kind of like learn about the topic. Like yeah, like Vince is saying, like DataCamp. The best languages to learn is Python and R, I would say right now, because those are kind of like the most standard ones that are used in the industry, and it'll give you a good background. But it also just depends on how you learn. If you're not good at learning online, definitely find a way of learning where you're surrounded by peers, because that will help you. Like going to a boot camp, you'll be interacting with people and you can kind of collaborate with people to work on projects. I know some people like to learn code just by like getting like just kind of applying it. So for some people, like what you could do is literally go on Kaggle. I'll post on I want to post on the chat a resource that I really like that has a ton of great code in it. It's on Kaggle. Oops, I sent it to Aaron, but so I'll have Aaron send out these resources after. But
yeah, a follow-up email with all the resources and the slide deck as well.
Cool, great. Yeah, so like on Kaggle, there's this this data science glossary where you can look up any technique that you want to learn, and then you can look up project examples where someone walked through that thing. So say you want to learn how to predict sales, you could literally find an entire notebook of Python code where someone already did that. This is not a field where plagiarism is a thing, I guess I would say. Like I copy people's code all the time, and in fact, that's how you learn code the best, because you're kind of figuring it out through repetition and kind of seeing how someone else did it. Let me see what else I have on here. Also, I think it's like, it's great to figure out what content area you're interested in, and it's okay to move around a little bit, but it does matter. Like, there's tons of data scientist jobs out there right now, and you might not be interested in all of them. I know that, like, I get pinged a lot on LinkedIn for insurance jobs, or jobs in insurance companies, kind of predicting like premiums and stuff like that. And the topic just doesn't interest me. So it can definitely impact like your overall satisfaction based on what content area that you're interested in. So if you're already coming from, you know, like operations, you might be interested in like a manufacturing company or something like that. Let's see. If you don't understand something, I would say don't assume that that's the only way that you can understand it. There's such a large proliferation of data science tools, and I think, like, if you don't understand something one way, it doesn't mean that it's the only way to understand it. Let me see. I'm gonna answer some of these questions here. Yes, there are many languages, and the programmers sometimes know only a fraction of what he wishes they would know. Yeah, that's a good point. There's definitely, I think there's there's so many people that are kind of like in the initial stages of learning how to code right now, because there's a lot of languages out there, and there's a lot of people that are just new to it. So that's definitely going to happen. The public sector, there's a ton of different jobs in data science. They might not always be called data scientist, but there's a ton of data that the government works with in its databases. The military is a perfect example of that, but there's also, like, I worked for a little bit as a data analyst at a county office of education, and there was just so much opportunity there. I would say in the government, it's hit or miss, because a lot of times there's a lot of bureaucracy behind those jobs. So sometimes they don't have the latest technology available or the latest budget to get that technology. So I know, like, with my job at Northrop, just the nature of the security of the job was that we had to operate within a highly secure VPN. And so that was definitely a challenge, because we couldn't get, like, they wanted to migrate to AWS, which would have been really awesome because there's a lot of skills that you can learn in AWS, but they just couldn't. It was like a 2-year project, versus like if I jumped to another company that was more flexible and are already learning, or they were already using AWS, it was a lot more valuable. Let's see. If I learn Python or R by myself, what would be the best idea to prove my ability to employers? I would say definitely a project. Yeah, having a project as kind of proof, and putting that, like, I think if you're, so like, for example, I've interviewed at Amazon before for one of their data science roles. Actually, I've interviewed at Amazon 2 times, and their interview is a technical interview, so you're live coding. So, like, it kind of just depends on what kind of company you're applying for. A lot of companies do have like technical interviews where you have to figure some sort of code out in front of them. But other companies, they're hiring more based on your own understanding of a project and what you did. So it's kind of just like, it depends what angle you're taking with that question. So either you're kind of understanding what are the basics of Python and R that you might be asked in an interview, or you could actually, do a project on Kaggle or with a publicly available data set that would kind of show your knowledge. Let's see, what's the difference between a data scientist and a data engineer? That's a great question. I think that's a question that a lot of employers are wondering too, and I think it's slowly evolving where eventually I think that this will happen. I'm not sure, but I think a lot of data scientists will have the skills of data engineers and vice versa. Right now, there's still a pretty high need for a separation, but in general, data engineers are a little bit more operational. They're focused on the infrastructure, data quality. So a lot of organizations have collected large amounts of data over time, and the data engineer is responsible for the ETL process of transferring that data into a data science environment and kind of monitoring the data. Whereas a data scientist is more focused on deriving insights from the data. So each of them have to have a good relationship because the data engineer has to understand how to make that data ready for a data scientist to clean and use. And then a data scientist has to understand the quality of the data and how it got there. So in turn, they're both important. They're both important roles and great skills to have. Let's see, money, quality of life, and government versus industry. Yep, totally. There's definitely a trade-off. How often do you reference materials online to code something? I feel like I'm always looking something up because I don't remember. Yes, all the time. So this is my issue with technical interviews where you're live coding. I personally don't believe that like the purpose of coding is to like memorize things off the top of your head. I think the whole purpose of open source languages is that people are sharing and people are designing things to be shared. So if you're looking to define a function or learn how to make a plot, you can almost guarantee that someone's done it already or done something like that. And so I'm all about going on to Stack Overflow and using someone else's materials. That's why people post questions. That's why people use those tools. So I'm all for it, but I don't know. There may be other opinions on that one out there, but I reference materials all the time. Let's see. Okay, expanding on data opportunities for education, school-based. Oh, great. Okay, speech language pathologist, but I deal with a lot of data. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think there's such a huge opportunity in education, and I know that like there's a lot of companies like startups that are kind of like growing in that field right now, especially in the speech language pathologist field. If I can think of some, I'll send them to Aaron. But I think like what I've heard is that role is like at a lot of schools, the administration or school counselors are really overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have on their plates. And so the opportunity there, I think a lot of it is that they have to collect a ton of data on the students they work with. So there's a huge opportunity there for sure to kind of like build better data management systems and maybe make insights from the data on the students a little bit better. Let's see, are software packages like Tableau and Power BI also important to learn for data scientists? So I would say yes. I have definitely gotten into Tableau and Power BI a little bit because when you're working at a big enterprise that has those type of licenses, they're like, a lot of enterprises will get confused about what a data scientist's role is, and they'll say, hey, can you make this in Tableau? Isn't that what you do? So it's definitely a valuable skill, and it's useful too. I think there's a lot of ways to make data visualizations through Python libraries, but Tableau and Power BI are more drag and drop. So yeah, it's been super useful for me. My first month at my current job was finishing a Tableau project that a group had started, and I think like it was valuable to have that skill set. Let's see. What do you think is most important when looking for a job as a data scientist? I think honestly, looking for a job as a data scientist, it's like it really is unique to where you're applying and what you want to get out of it, because that's how you're gonna find the right role for you at that time. You may, yeah, I think it's just, you're definitely going to need some level of education to get a role as a data scientist, and you're going to need some level of experience, but I think there's just a lot of ways to create that, and it doesn't have to be getting a master's degree. It can be. I think it's super valuable to have like a heavy math background, if you can get that, but if your way to do it based on your budget and your time is to um, learn a bunch of different applicable techniques in Kaggle or through other various forms, I think that's also super valuable. Yes, yep, engineering. Yeah, engineering is a lot of data manipulation. Okay, so while playing with languages like Python, what do you believe might be the best ways to learn the right statistical methods to apply the situation? K-means clustering versus other clustering techniques. Okay, so I would say with that question about the best way to learn the right statistical methods, there's a book. It's The Elements of Statistical Learning, and I'll send that to Aaron as well as the same authors wrote a book called Applied Predictive Modeling. Those two books, I would say, are the best books for visualizing the math behind some of those methods, because we're getting to a point where a lot of the libraries in Python and R will do all the math for you behind the functions. So you don't have to have a crystal clear understanding of what's happening, but it's definitely valuable to know what's happening so that you can explain it. You can kind of explain your results. So yeah, those two books are really good for understanding the statistical methods. And then if you haven't taken a basic statistics course on like Coursera or something like that, that's also a really good idea, just so that you're familiar with the terminology behind it. Another one too that I took in my master's program is like linear algebra, because you can understand like matrices. That's a good foundation for those. Yeah. Let's see. Are you aware of any projects or project categories someone who is an aspiring data engineer could do in order to help get a job? I think that you could, I would look at any type of project where you are pulling data from one place to another. So whether you're building an API to pull data from, like a good example is like the what is it, the weather, the online weather database NOAA, NOAA. That website has a bunch of data on weather from satellites in different areas. And for example, they have a free API, and you could build out the code to pull that data into Python. And that would kind of show some of your experience. You could also, I think AWS and some of the other products like it have the ability to create free accounts up to a certain amount of storage, and you could use some of the tools in there to build a line where you're transferring data from one place to another. Those are just some suggestions. I'm not a data engineer, so I don't know everything about that topic, but that would be my suggestion. Stack Overflow, yes, definitely. How do you get over the hump of lack of experience at the start of your job search? I would say just dive in, like take roles that you, like I said, like don't limit yourself to the data scientist title. Just dive into a place where you're going to get experience hands-on working with data. So if the title is analyst, like don't be afraid to take that job, because there's so many analyst positions right now that are basically bleeding into data science. I know at my current company, there's a bunch of analysts that are stuck in Excel, and if they could code in Python, they could do so much cool stuff. So I think that's huge. Let's see. What about librarianship as a background? I don't think that's limiting at all. I think that's I don't know much about librarianship, but I would imagine it's a lot to do with information science. So it sounds like you would have the perfect opportunity. Aaron, are we doing okay on time? I know that there's a lot more questions.
Yeah, as long as you're okay. I think we can easily go until 7 o'clock or so.
Cool, great. Do you recommend a data engineer learn Docker and AWS? Yes, definitely. I would say take it step by step. You may not need to learn like Docker and AWS all at once, but if you think about like the foundational skills of data engineering, you're definitely going to want to know how to code. You're going to want to know, you're going to want to know how to work with large amounts of data. So, Docker and AWS are valuable skills for a data scientist, a solutions architect, or a data engineer. But number one, you're just going to want to have that basic experience of ETL and monitoring data quality, and then also understanding what can go wrong in a pipeline and how to fix that with engineering. Let's see, as an actuary, understanding the meaning of the numbers is the most important thing, I believe. But it sounds like understanding the languages is the most important for the data scientist, if I understand right. I would say no, not necessarily. In data science, understanding the languages is definitely important, but the numbers is huge, because at the end of the day, you're always going to be communicating your results to a stakeholder, and they're going to ask all kinds of questions, and you're going to want to be able to give them a good understanding of how you got to where you got. So that's why exploratory data analysis before you do any type of machine learning or predictive modeling is so key, because there's just so much if you're asked to walk back into the work that you did, you're going to want to back it up with the numbers. I've made this mistake many times where someone asked for a predictive model. I needed to build it quickly, and I skipped too fast past the exploratory data analysis, and questions came up about things that I couldn't answer. Let's see. Do you have any concern considering some of the, distrustful ways models related to the COVID outbreak have been distorted or misused, that it may result in an erosion of some opportunities in the data science field? That's a good question. I don't necessarily have an opinion on it. Yeah, I would say it's possible, but all we can do is continue to use data science ethically. Yeah. Could you post all your, oh, good, yeah, make sure that you're responding to all panelists when you ask a question. Is getting a master's degree necessary to make the jump, or could you get away with taking a number of Coursera or Udemy courses? Definitely master's degree is not necessary. It really depends. I definitely think at this point there's just such a high need for data science jobs that taking classes on Coursera, if you're diligent about finishing online coursework, it's just as valuable. I would say the value in getting a master's, like for me, was that it was a complete curriculum that someone it was incentivized, first of all, not just because of the cost, but because I was in a cohort that was moving together. Some of like the Coursera and Udemy courses can be a little bit scattered because you're with people. Some people are like half in it, some people they sign up but they're not in the class at all. So if you can work in that environment, I would say by all means do it, because I don't think employers at this point are gonna, like, if you're a strong candidate, they're not gonna not hire you if you don't have a master's. So that's what I would say. I'm very new to data. Is being a data scientist different than being an analyst? How are they similar and different? That's a good question. There's like so many different terms out there right now, right? And there's different job titles. What do they all mean? I think at this point, it's really like what you create. I got hired as an analyst, like I said, at a county office of education, and I was able to start using Python to work with their large data sets. I would say, like, if you were to ask someone in the industry, they would say that the main difference is a data scientist is using high computational tools on large amounts of data to derive insights. So the main difference might be like just that element of using programming and then using like high computing power of different techniques. But like if you're an analyst and you want to start doing that, then by all means, like, go wild. Like, you could impress your boss, you could do a project that impresses other employers. So if you have access to large amounts of data and you're already starting to learn data science skills, but your title isn't data scientist, go for it. What are your thoughts behind business analysts who are looking at data and driving business decisions without a statistical method, such as correlation coefficients, to prove that they're driving business in the right direction? In other words, I often feel like I see business decisions made off of simple trend visualization. Yeah, that's super common, and I think it's just the nature of, like, we're in this world where the amount, the level of the speed at which this field is moving is so rapid, and there's so much research that's been done where you can find some pretty cool findings using a little bit more advanced techniques. But I think that it's just a matter of like everyone's doing the best they can, and there's a lot of business analysts that unfortunately, like, they need to be upskilled. Well, not unfortunately. I don't want to criticize anyone that is in that place, but there's definitely an opportunity there for them to get upskilled, or have some help from their company on getting upskilled, so that they're not making decisions based on gut or based on their own kind of like siloed experience with that data. And so, yeah, I think if anything, like what your point goes to is just really learning those skills so that you can kind of help analysts that are less advanced think about things in a different way.
Got time for one more.
One more? Okay, so.
Or two more. Do these last two, we're good.
Okay, open source projects that use Python for data modeling. There's a ton of them. I would say like start with Kaggle. You could also look in Coursera. There's a ton of them. While getting a master's degree isn't necessarily required, would you say the knowledge and experience you gained from the program was very valuable? Yeah, it really was. They covered things like crisp DM, project management, agile. They covered like how to deliver a data science project. So like I said, having that sort of like rounded off curriculum helped me to see data science from like the coding aspect all the way to like how to deliver it in a business and how to like help business stakeholders see the whole project. So yeah, it's really just specific to you and your own experience, your own budget. Just don't limit yourself if you're not able to get a master's degree. There's so many other opportunities like Promotable to get data science skills. Cool, and feel free to find me on LinkedIn, everyone. I'm happy to connect. So yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Well, thanks. That was really, really good. Well, lots of other questions, but at this point, I mean, we have to stop somewhere, otherwise I'm going to keep you here all night. But thanks for, really good talk. I think you explained a lot of things really, really well. There's a lot of like these questions that I think a lot of folks struggle with, and there's only so much you can find from just Googling online. So definitely appreciate you taking the time to really answer everyone's question. I don't know if there is a clapping hands emoji on Zoom, but if there was, I would definitely be doing it. But based on all the thank yous, I think people really enjoyed it. And I mean, we had over 50 people, 50 legitimate people. My apologies again for all that those like hackers who came in the middle. But anyway, I'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone. So you guys will all get the deck, any extra resources that Annie has, I'll send those over as well. And then if anyone's curious about other upcoming events, classes, feel free just to shoot me an email. It's Aaron, AARON @promotable.io. I'll be sending that out as well. And then definitely come, next week and the week after. And then, I hope to actually see everyone in person at some point once we're able to do these again in person. Thanks so much.